The memorial garden was quiet at 7 in the morning. Too quiet. James Carter had chosen this hour deliberately, hoping to avoid the sympathetic stares and hollow condolences that always seemed to find him in crowded places. His wife's memorial bench sat beneath an old oak tree, its bronze plaque catching the first rays of sunlight. He'd commissioned it 2 years ago, after the cancer had finally won. He was halfway down the stone path when he saw the boy. A child, maybe 11 or 12, was curled up on Sarah's bench, his thin frame wrapped in a jacket far too large for him. His sneakers were held together with duct tape, and a worn backpack served as his pillow. James stopped, his morning coffee growing cold in his hand. What was a kid doing here? Where were his parents? The boy stirred, sensing his presence. Dark eyes opened, instantly alert in the way that spoke of too many nights spent vulnerable. He sat up quickly, gathering his backpack with practiced efficiency. "Sorry, sir, I'm leaving." His voice was hoarse, probably from sleeping in the cold. "Wait." James found himself speaking before he'd decided to. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" The boy's expression hardened. He'd clearly heard that question before, from people who didn't mean it. "I'm fine. Nobody needs to call anyone." He moved to leave, but his backpack caught on the bench's armrest, spilling its contents across the memorial garden's pristine pathway. A water bottle, a few granola bar wrappers, a worn paperback, and something else. A photograph, its edges softened by countless handlings. James bent to help gather the items, and his hand froze over the photo. The woman in the picture was smiling, her hand resting on her swollen belly. She stood in front of a building James knew intimately, the original office of Carter Technologies, back when it was just 3 programmers and a dream. The woman wore a staff ID badge. Emma Richardson. James's vision narrowed. He picked up the photograph with trembling fingers, and his world tilted on its axis. "Where did you get this?" His voice came out sharper than intended. The boy snatched the photo back, protective. "It's my mum's. She worked there once, a long time ago. Emma Richardson worked for me." James sat down heavily on the bench, no longer trusting his legs. 12 years ago. She was my executive assistant when we were launching the company. The boy's defensive posture cracked slightly. "You're James Carter." It wasn't a question. The kid knew exactly who he was. "What's your name?" "Noah." A pause. "Noah Richardson." James did the math automatically. 12 years. Emma had been pregnant when she left. She'd resigned suddenly, citing personal reasons, and he'd been too deep in Series A funding rounds to push for details. Richard, his business partner, had handled her exit paperwork. "Where's your mother now?" Noah's eyes dropped to the photograph in his hands. "St. Mary's Hospital, 4th floor. She's been there 3 weeks." The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture James didn't want to see. "And you've been sleeping here?" "The shelter's full. The social worker says maybe next week there'll be space, but Mom needs me close, in case." He didn't finish the sentence. James pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the hospital. Your mother shouldn't be. They know I'm here." Noah's voice was quiet but firm. "They let me visit during the day. She made me promise not to tell them I've been sleeping outside. She was afraid they'd take me away." "Take you away where?" "Foster care." Mom said that's what happens when you don't have anywhere else to go. The morning sun had risen higher now, illuminating the memorial garden in harsh clarity. James looked at the boy properly for the first time. Noah had Emma's eyes, that same intelligent gaze that had made her so good at anticipating problems before they arose. But there was something else in the shape of his nose, the line of his jaw, something familiar. "Noah, I need to ask you something. And I need you to be honest with me. Does your mother ever talk about your father?" The boy's expression shuttered. "She said he was a good man once, that's all." James felt something crack inside his chest. What did she mean, once? Noah shrugged, but there was pain beneath the casual gesture. "I don't know. She wouldn't tell me anything else. Just that I should remember he wasn't always bad, no matter what happened." The coffee in James's hand had gone ice cold. He stood, decision crystallizing. "Come on, we're going to see your mother. Now, right now." The hospital was a 15-minute drive, but it felt like hours. Noah sat in the passenger seat of James's Mercedes, hyper-aware of the leather interior, the heated seats, the dashboard that looked like a spaceship control panel. He kept his dirty sneakers carefully away from the floor mats. James made phone calls as he drove, his voice sharp with the authority of a man used to having problems solved immediately. By the time they pulled into the hospital parking garage, he'd arranged for a social worker to meet them and for hospital administration to pull Emma Richardson's file. 4th floor, room 412. Emma looked smaller than James remembered. 12 years and sickness had hollowed her out, leaving sharp edges where soft curves used to be. An oxygen tube ran beneath her nose, and monitors beeped quietly beside her bed. But when her eyes opened and she saw James standing in her doorway, he watched recognition and panic flash across her face in equal measure. "Noah, baby, wait outside for a minute." "Mum, please." The boy obeyed, but James could see him through the door's window, watching. "James." Emma's voice was a whisper. "You shouldn't be here." "Emma, I need you to tell me the truth. Is Noah my son?" The silence that followed was answer enough. "Why didn't you tell me?" He heard the shake in his own voice. 12 years, Emma. Why?" She closed her eyes, and when she spoke, the words came out carefully, like she'd rehearsed them 1,000 times in her head. "Richard came to my apartment 2 weeks after I found out I was pregnant. He said the company was at a critical stage, that a scandal would destroy everything you'd worked for, that investors would run if they thought you were irresponsible, sleeping with your employees." James felt ice forming in his veins. "Richard knew?" "He knew. He offered me money. A lot of money. Enough to disappear and never come back. And he said if I didn't take it, he'd make sure I never worked in tech again. That he'd spread rumors, destroy my reputation." Her breath hitched. "I was 26 years old, pregnant and terrified, so I took the money and ran." "Where's the money now?" Emma laughed, a bitter sound that turned into a cough. "Gone. Medical bills, rent, trying to give Noah a decent life. The heart condition started when he was 7. I've been fighting insurance companies and hospital bills ever since." James sat down in the chair beside her bed, his legs suddenly unable to hold him. "Heart condition? Congenital defect. He needs surgery, but it's expensive, and my insurance." She trailed off. "I've been on a waiting list for a charity program, but Noah's getting worse. The doctors say he has maybe 6 months before it becomes critical. Why didn't you call me? Even if you believed what Richard said back then, why not reach out later?" "Because I believed you knew." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Richard told me you'd approved everything, that you'd signed off on the severance package, that it was your idea to make me disappear. He showed me documents with your signature. Forged." James felt rage building, hot and bright. "Emma, I never knew. I never would have. I know that now." She looked toward the door where Noah still waited. "But by the time I realized Richard had lied, years had passed. You'd gotten married. You had your own life. And I thought maybe Noah was better off not knowing he had a father who didn't want him. I would have wanted him." James stood, moving to the window so Emma wouldn't see the fury in his face. "I would have wanted both of you." Through the glass, he could see the hospital's memorial garden, the same one where he'd met Noah that morning. Sarah's bench was visible from here, a small dot of bronze among the green. "Sarah would have understood," he said quietly. "When I met her, I told her about you. Not about Noah I didn't know, but about how guilty I felt that I'd let a good employee just disappear without fighting for her. She told me that if I ever got the chance to make it right, I should." Emma's monitor beeped a little faster. "I'm dying, James. Liver failure. The doctors give me maybe 3 months, probably less. That's why I had to tell Noah to find you." James turned sharply. "What?" "I didn't tell him you were his father. I couldn't. Not without knowing if you'd want him. But I told him where to find you. The memorial bench, early mornings. I knew you'd be there." Forged. James felt rage building, hot and bright. "Emma, I never knew. I never would have. I know that now." She looked toward the door where Noah still waited. But by the time I realized Richard had lied, years had passed. You'd gotten married. You had your own life. And I thought maybe Noah was better off not knowing he had a father who didn't want him. I would have wanted him. James stood, moving to the window so Emma wouldn't see the fury in his face. James, I can't afford. I'm not asking. He was already dialing. You worked for me, you were carrying my child, and my business partner drove you away with threats and lies. I owe you 12 years of child support, 12 years of being a father, and 12 years of making sure you were okay. Consider this a down payment. Over the next 3 hours, James Carter demonstrated exactly why he'd built a multi-million-dollar company from nothing. By noon, Emma had been transferred to a private room with the hospital's best hepatologist consulting on her case. A family law attorney was drawing up emergency custody papers. A private investigator had been hired with one specific task: find every piece of evidence tying Richard Morrison to Emma Richardson's departure. Noah sat in his mother's new room, overwhelmed by the sudden transformation. Clean clothes had appeared from somewhere. One of the nurses had a son, Noah's age. Food had materialized, real food, not the cold sandwiches from the hospital cafeteria. And James Carter kept making phone calls, his voice calm but unyielding, as he systematically dismantled every obstacle in their path. "Mom," Noah whispered during a rare, quiet moment. "Is he really my dad?" Emma reached for his hand. "Yes, baby, he is. Why didn't you tell me before?" "Because I was scared and stupid and trying to protect you from what I thought was rejection." She squeezed his fingers gently. "But I was wrong. Your father is a good man. He always was." The private investigator worked fast. By 6 that evening, he was back in Emma's hospital room with a manila folder that James opened with shaking hands. The documents inside told a story of systematic fraud. Richard Morrison hadn't just driven Emma away, he'd been embezzling from Carter Technologies for years, using shell companies and falsified invoices. Emma's severance package had been one of dozens of suspicious payments, all authorized using forged signatures. The investigator had found the original contracts, the real signatures, and most damningly, emails from Richard's personal account outlining the scheme. "He's been bleeding the company dry since the beginning," the investigator said. "I estimate about $4 million over 12 years, hidden in operational costs and vendor payments." James's knuckles went white around the folder. "Can we prove it?" "In court? Absolutely. I've already contacted the FBI. They'll want to talk to you tomorrow." That night, James didn't leave the hospital. He pulled strings to get a cot set up in Emma's room, and when visiting hours ended, the staff mysteriously forgot he was there. Noah fell asleep in the chair beside his mother's bed, and Emma dozed fitfully under her new medications. James sat in the dark, watching his son breathe. 12 years. 12 years of birthdays missed, of first words unheard, of scraped knees he hadn't bandaged. 12 years of this boy sleeping on benches and in shelters, hungry and scared, while James lived in his glass-walled house and thought he had problems. His phone buzzed. A text from his head of security. "Morrison just arrived at the office. He's in the building." James typed back, "On my way." He left a note for Emma and slipped out into the hospital's fluorescent hallways. The drive to Carter Technologies took 20 minutes at midnight. The building rose up from the tech corridor like a glass monument to success, its lobby gleaming with polished marble and recessed lighting. Richard was in the executive office, reviewing quarterly reports. He looked up when James entered, surprise flickering across his well-fed face. "James? What are you doing here at this hour?" "I could ask you the same thing." James closed the door behind him. "But I already know the answer. You're moving money." Richard's expression smoothed into concern. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't." James's voice was ice. "I've spent the day with a very thorough private investigator. I know about the shell companies. I know about the forged signatures. I know about every dollar you've stolen over the last 12 years. The concern shifted to calculation. Richard leaned back in his chair, the picture of relaxed confidence. You can't prove anything. FBI begs to differ. They'll be here tomorrow morning with a warrant. James walked to the window, looking down at the city lights below. But that's not even why I'm here. I'm here because of Emma Richardson. He heard Richard's sharp intake of breath. You remember Emma, don't you, Richard? My executive assistant. The woman you threatened and bribed into disappearing 12 years ago. James, whatever she told you. She told me everything. How you showed up at her apartment. How you threatened her career. How you told her I knew and approved. James turned, and his face held the kind of cold fury that built empires and destroyed them. How you showed her forged documents with my signature. Richard stood, hands raised in a placating gesture. Look, I was protecting the company. We were at a critical juncture, and the last thing we needed was a scandal. You would have done the same thing. Would I have threatened a pregnant woman? Would I have driven away my own child? James stepped closer. That's what you did, Richard. That boy, Noah, is my son. My son, who's been living in shelters and sleeping on memorial benches while you've been stealing my money to buy yourself a vacation home in Aspen. The color drained from Richard's face. You can't pin that on me. Whatever arrangement I had with Emma was between us. She signed the papers willingly. Under duress and deception, James pulled out his phone, showing Richard the screen. This is Emma's sworn statement, given to my attorney this afternoon. This is the PI's report, documenting your fraud. These are the FBI agents who'll be here at 8 a.m. tomorrow. You're done, Richard. Richard's composure cracked. You're making a mistake. I helped build this company. We're partners. No, you're a thief and a liar who saw an opportunity and took it. James headed for the door. Security is on their way up. They'll escort you out. Your company access is revoked as of now. My lawyers will be filing both criminal and civil charges tomorrow. James. Wait. Goodbye, Richard. James left him there, surrounded by the trappings of success that were about to crumble into dust. He drove back to the hospital with his hands steady on the wheel and his phone ringing constantly. Lawyers, board members, PR consultants, all scrambling to manage the crisis. He ignored them all until he was back in Emma's room, back in that uncomfortable cot, watching Noah sleep with one hand clutched around his mother's. The next 2 weeks moved with surreal speed. The FBI arrested Richard Morrison on 14 counts of embezzlement and fraud. The story hit the news. Tech Millionaire's partner arrested in $1 million scheme, but James's PR team managed to keep Emma and Noah's names out of it, citing privacy concerns for the medical nature of the case. The company's board had emergency meetings. James stepped down as CEO temporarily, installing a trusted COO while he dealt with personal matters. The investors, surprisingly, rallied behind him. The fraud had been Richard's alone, and James's immediate transparency had earned him credibility. Emma's treatment intensified. The new hepatologist was cautiously optimistic about a transplant, though the waiting list was long, and Noah's surgery was scheduled. James sat with him the morning they wheeled him into the OR, holding his son's hand while the anesthesia took effect. Dad. Noah's voice was sleepy, the drugs making him loopy. It was the first time he'd used that word. Yeah, buddy. If I don't wake up, tell Mom I love her. And tell her I'm not scared. James's throat closed. You're going to wake up, I promise. But if I don't, you will. James squeezed his hand. You're a Carter. We're too stubborn to quit. Noah smiled, his eyes drifting closed. Too stubborn. I like that. The surgery took 6 hours. James spent them in the waiting room with Emma in a wheelchair beside him, both of them silent and terrified. When the surgeon finally emerged, still in his scrubs, James stood so quickly he nearly knocked over his chair. He did great. The repair went perfectly. He'll need time to recover, but barring complications, Noah should have a completely normal life. You can't prove anything. FBI begs to differ. They'll be here tomorrow morning with a warrant. James walked to the window, looking down at the city lights below. But that's not even why I'm here. I'm here because of Emma Richardson. He heard Richard's sharp intake of breath. You remember Emma, don't you, Richard? My executive assistant. the woman you threatened and bribed into disappearing 12 years ago. James, whatever she told you. She told me everything. Would I have threatened a pregnant woman? Would I have driven away my own child? James stepped closer. That's what you did, Richard. That boy, Noah, is my son. My son, who's been living in shelters and sleeping on memorial benches while you've been stealing my money to buy yourself a vacation home in Aspen. The color drained from Richard's face. You can't pin that on me. Whatever arrangement I had with Emma was between us. She signed the papers willingly, under duress and deception. Is this really ours? Really ours? Forever. What about when Mom? He couldn't finish. James sat on the bed, patting the space beside him. Noah joined him, and James put an arm around his son's thin shoulders. Your mom is going to be okay. The transplant list is moving, and we've got the best doctors in the state. But even if the worst happens, this is still your home. You're my son, Noah. That's not conditional, and it's not going away. Richard said, you didn't want me. When the cops took him away, he was yelling about how I ruined everything. James turned Noah to face him. Richard Morrison is a liar and a criminal. He spent 12 years stealing from me, and before that, he stole something even more precious, the chance to know you from the beginning. But he doesn't get to steal anymore. None of that was your fault, do you understand? None of it. Noah nodded, but James could see he didn't quite believe it yet. That would take time. Time they now had. He settled her into the adjustable bed, making sure her medications were within reach. You gave me a son, Emma. There's no repayment for that. Noah explored the house with the cautious wonder of a kid who'd learned not to trust good things. His room had a real bed, a desk, a bookshelf. Through the window, he could see the backyard with its oak tree and tire swing. Dad? He appeared in the doorway, and James felt that same clutch in his chest every time Noah used that word. Morrison, she said from the bench. You didn't just steal money, you stole years from a family. You separated a father from his son and left a sick woman and her child vulnerable and afraid. The law can only repay the financial debt. The moral debt is beyond calculation. Richard was led away in handcuffs. James didn't feel satisfaction, exactly. Just a sense of rightness, like a bone finally set properly after healing crooked. Emma got her transplant 6 months after Noah's surgery. The call came at 2 a.m, a donor match. Young woman killed in a car accident, her family choosing to give life through death. James drove them to the hospital through empty streets. Noah asleep in the back seat, Emma gripping the door handle with white knuckles. I'm scared, she whispered. I know, but you're going to make it. How can you be sure? Because Noah needs you. And because I need you to see him graduate high school, go to college, maybe even get married someday. James glanced at her in the rearview mirror. You're not done yet, Emma, not even close. The transplant was successful. Emma's recovery was slow but steady. And on a Tuesday afternoon in June, James found himself in family court, standing before another judge with Noah on his left and Emma on his right. The gavel came down. Adoption approved. Noah Richardson Carter, welcome to your new family. Officially, Noah was 13 now, taller and healthier than the scared boy James had found on a memorial bench. He'd grown into his features, and the resemblance between father and son was unmistakable. When the judge asked if he had anything to say, Noah stepped forward. I just want to say thank you to my mum for fighting so hard to keep me safe, even when it was scary. And to my dad for his voice cracked slightly, for showing up, for choosing us when you didn't have to. I always had to, James said quietly. From the moment I knew you existed, there was never a choice. You're my son. That's not something I do, it's something I am. After the hearing, they went to dinner at Noah's favorite restaurant. Nothing fancy, just a burger place near the house. Emma was strong enough now to walk without assistance, though she tired easily. Noah ate 3 burgers and complained about his summer reading list. James listened to them bicker about whether graphic novels counted as real books and felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Peace. That night, after Noah had gone to bed and Emma had retired to her room, James stood in the backyard beneath the stars. His phone buzzed with messages. Business always continued, even after personal earthquakes, but he ignored them. He thought about Sarah, who'd never met Noah, but who'd taught him that family was something you built, not just something you were born into. He thought about Richard, rotting in prison for trying to tear that family apart. And he thought about the strange path that had led him here, from that memorial bench to this moment. Sometimes the truth did shock everyone. Sometimes it destroyed what you thought you knew. But sometimes, if you were very lucky, it also gave you a second chance to get things right. James pulled out his phone and deleted all the business messages unread. Then he texted his COO, taking the rest of the week off. Family time. The response came back immediately. "About time, boss." He smiled and went inside, where his son and his son's mother were sleeping under his roof, safe and warm, and his, not perfect, but whole, not planned, but right. The memorial garden still existed, and James still visited sometimes, leaving flowers on Sarah's bench. But now he brought Noah with him, teaching his son the names of plants and the stories of the people memorialized there, teaching him that the past shaped you but didn't define you, that mistakes could be forgiven, if not forgotten, that family was worth fighting for, even when the fight seemed impossible. Especially then. Noah asked once if he was angry about the 12 years they'd lost. "Every day," James answered honestly, "but I'm not going to waste the years we have being bitter about the ones we don't." "That's very zen, Dad." "I'm a millionaire tech founder. We're all a little zen." He ruffled Noah's hair. "Now come on. Your mom wants Thai food for dinner, and you know how she gets when we're late." They walked back to the car together, father and son, their shadows stretching long in the evening light. Behind them, Sarah's memorial bench gleamed in the sun, a reminder of love that endured beyond death. Ahead of them lay dinner and homework and all the ordinary chaos of family life. James had built a company. He'd made his fortune. He'd weathered loss and betrayal and his own mistakes. But this messy, beautiful, hard-won family was his greatest achievement. And it had all started with a boy on a bench and a photograph that changed everything.